Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Martin.
This is literally what I was gonna go. I'm Patrick motherfucking Guerra.
I stopped myself, but yes, that is tonight. Yes, Patrick, tonight we are reviewing the new film by Maggie Gyllenhaal, her second directorial film, and it is a little movie called The Motherfucking Bride. Not really called The Motherfucking Bride, but that's what we're going to call it, The Bride.
Damon the Bride released in March of 2026, starring the likes of Zlatko Buric as Lupino, Matthew Marr as James, John McGarrow as Clyde, Jake Gyllenhaal as Ronnie Reed, Peter Sarsgaard as Jake Wiles, Penelope Cruz as Myrna Malloy, Annette Bening as Dr. Euphronius, Christian Bale as Frank, and Jessie Buckley, the Oscar darling, here we go, as the bride herself. Damon, in 1930s Chicago, Frankenstein asks Dr. Euphronius to help create a companion. They give life to a murdered woman as the bride, sparking romance, police interest, and radical social change. As you mentioned, Damon, written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. The bride is upon us, Damon. It's alive. It's alive. No one ever said that, by the way. It's this is it. We're here, Damon. The bride is finally here. By the way, I want to tell you something. I'm looking at the budget right now. This is a Warner Brothers film. And boy, do I hope we keep Warner Brothers. And I don't, it's looking bad. 80 million bucks. This is an $80 million budget. And it's all there on the screen. This is a big, bad movie. I mean, bad and good, bad in the good way. Big, bad, bold movie. And they spent every penny of it. I don't feel like this got spent on The Rock's salary. I really feel like it's all on screen. And I just love sitting down for a movie that feels like a big ass movie, Damon. The Bride is a big ass movie.
The Bride is also, and I mean this as an absolute compliment, it is a weird movie.
Yeah.
And in the best ways possible. Not in to reference another Jesse Buckley movie, not like Men, where I want to punch myself at the end of the movie. Weird in the way that you wonder how a big studio got behind this.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it. I'm like, wow, way to go, because this movie. This movie's weird in all the best ways, but when I got done watching it, I went and saw it with my girlfriend last night. And I was like, "What'd you think?" She's like, "I really liked it." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, because she's she's less art house than I am, and so I was like, "Man, maybe she's not going to dig it." She's like, "No, I really liked it," and I appreciate that. The people at Warner Brothers, hopefully they're still around a year from now, actually gave this the green light and said, you know what, we're going to take a shot on something like this. And remember, Warner Brothers also, took a shot on Sinners, which is, up for 1 million awards this year and winning a lot of awards too. But I was super impressed that this movie does not play like a big budget, just an action whatever version of the Bride of Frankenstein or Frankenstein, any of that. And we're basically 2 films deep now, because Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein came out last year and it's nominated for a bunch of Oscars this year. And that is a much, much, much different movie than The Bride. But the fact that they greenlit this and said, here's $80 million, go make your movie. And this movie is weird in all the best ways. I was stunned. I was stunned that this was an actual studio film.
Yeah, Damon, I don't want to make this podcast about what's happening in Hollywood right now with Paramount approved, not approved, but they have won the acquisition rights to Warner Brothers, and they will go through a regulatory process, and they may or may not get it. I'm crossing my fingers that California can stop it from happening, because we don't need consolidation. Because in consolidation, Damon, when these two companies merge, you have to trim the fat, because they're about to pay like $110 billion for Warner Brothers. So to justify that cost, they're going to have to trim everywhere they can and take the best things with them and trim everything else. So you think they're going to make an $80 million art house Maggie Gyllenhaal movie where it's not like a classic horror movie type trope thing with standard storytelling? They're just going to say no to that. They're going to go, no, 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 Maggie, why don't you go act for us? We don't need these things. We don't need these risks. You don't take risks when you consolidate like this and you're trying to save money, billions upon billions of dollars. Um, Warner Brothers is in the habit of taking risks. They took a risk on a little movie called Joker a few years back, 2019, I think it was. And they said, what if we made a Batman movie where A, Batman's not in it, and B, the Joker's in it, but he's a psychopath who's just some guy on the street, and it's like a Martin Scorsese gangster film. High risk. So high, in fact, that at the time they asked Paramount for a little bit of money to share the cost, to share the risk, because they were like, we don't know how this is going to go. And then it turned into a billion-dollar movie. It turned into an incredibly successful movie. You need studios that are willing to risk to do things that are insane. And I want to move on from that and get into the movie, but I'm just saying that there is an importance to saying stop these mergers from happening.
And hey, you take a risk sometimes you get the Joker, then you take another risk, you get Joker Folly I'll Do, which was a giant pile of shit. So,
Some
yeah,
people love
like I
that
said,
movie, including your boy Tarantino loves that movie.
well, I love my boy Tarantino, but his choice of movies is not always the best. But yeah, but I mean, all jokes aside, like you're absolutely right. Like you got to have people that are willing to take that risk and say, listen, we're not going to make $1 billion on this. Just like when Apple invested a shit ton of money and let Martin Scorsese make Killers of the Flower Moon, like they
Yeah.
gave a ton of money. Like you're Martin Scorsese, go do what you want to do. But yeah, you're right. So when it comes to The Bride, I think what is so interesting about this film, and I bring up, I know it sounds like this is just my normal go to, let me just kick a film because I use this as an example, but we've had a lot of like reinventions of classic movies in recent years, and I go back to Nosferatu. Of course, we had Dracula Love Tale. We had, if you want to go back a little further, we had Last Voyage of the Demeter, which was also a Dracula story. We had even Renfield, and obviously we had Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro. And if you go back, and people are like, God, stop kicking this movie. But I'm just saying this as an example. My biggest criticism of Nosferatu, you remember, which was, I've seen this before. There was nothing new in here. And yes, it's stylistically very beautiful. And Robert Eggers is a great filmmaker, and I like the performances. But it just felt like, man, this is just like, I've seen this before. Like, this is nothing new. And especially when you're dealing with material like Dracula and or Frankenstein, which are probably the two most well-known monster movies of all time. Like not vampires or just reanimated
Yeah.
corpses. We're talking about those two specific characters. And Nosferatu is Dracula, just in case anyone's curious. So I was just like, I hope, and by the trailer alone, and I try to avoid trailers, but I think I saw one trailer for this in the theater. It was unavoidable, and it didn't tell you a whole lot. But I
Yeah.
was like, okay, like I got the vibe of like it being set in like a 1930s, like kind of like an old school, time period, whatever it was. I was like, all right, I'm interested. And right away, getting into this movie, I was like, okay, yes, we are dealing with two characters who are very well known. Frankenstein being played by the great Christian Bale, and technically the bride of Frankenstein being played by the great Jessie Buckley, who, by the way, we will release this episode in a couple of days before the Oscars. If you listen to this a week later, she's going to be an Oscar winner because there's pretty much no chance.
Slam dunk.
You can't predict much about the Oscars. You pretty much go ahead and hand her the Oscar for Hamnet. She's going to win. Sorry, everybody else in that category. You have no chance. Like Jessie Buckley's going to win that Oscar. But when I saw the casting, we talked about this going back to, Thor Love and Thunder, which is just a terrible movie. But we said even in that movie, as bad as it was, Christian Bale was still good. Christian Bale elevates
Yeah.
every movie he's in. But what I love about this movie is Christian Bale very much takes kind of a side role. Like he
Yes.
is very much the supporting character to Jessie Buckley's bride. But this movie transcends so many different genres, and that can be a dangerous thing. We've had that conversation before on the show when you're like, we don't know. Like, is it a horror movie? Is it a sci-fi movie? Is it a comedy? Is it this or is it that? And it does work when you do it right. When you get the right kind of talented filmmaker and the kind of talented writer. I think Sinners is a movie that transcends a lot of different genres. But there are definitely examples of bad versions of that where it's like, I don't know what you were trying to say, and I don't know where you were trying to go or what you were trying to do, and it all just became a muddled mess. I'm here to tell you, Patrick, The Bride it's a musical, it's a comedy at moments, it's got a horror element to it, it's an action adventure movie, it's a bit of a gangster story in a weird way, but it all works. It's like literally putting it all together in the pot, and what comes out is like a delicious stew.
I think I saw that same trailer that you saw for the very first teaser thing that came out. And I thought to myself, this looks great. I know these are great actors. And but what I couldn't nail down from that trailer was the tone. I was like, what is this movie though? Like, what is it going to be? And I was pleasantly surprised because it is labeled a horror film, and I think the horror really is kind of first act, maybe. I think the first act of the movie, and then after that, it tonally shifts into sort of this fever dream gangster romance, Bonnie and Clyde type shoot 'em up thing. Like, but it's really fucking well done, and I think why it's so well done. And if people don't listen to the intro, Damon said it right then and there. Maggie Gyllenhaal had heard so much about the Bride of Frankenstein. We all know the Bride of Frankenstein. It's iconic. We see that face looking off to the side and screeching into the end. You go, oh, the bride. Well, I watched The Bride of Frankenstein a couple of years ago. It's really well made for the time period, the 1930s. It's beautifully, beautifully made. Good luck finding the Bride of Frankenstein in it. She's not in the fucking movie. She's at the end, the whole movie. And another movie, and if you haven't seen The Bride of Frankenstein and you have seen Frankenhooker, almost like beat for beat is the same as Bride of Frankenstein. When you walked in that VHS aisle when you were a kid and you saw Frankenhooker on the shelf and you weren't going to rent it because your mom's going to not let you rent a video called Frankenhooker, you think it's going to be a movie about a Frankenhooker running around the streets of New York City, and it's all about the doctor who's making her and finding parts and stuff, and then she shows up in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and you're like, really? That's Frankenhooker? That's that's how I feel about the Bride of Frankenstein. And I think a lot of women were like, "Oh, but it's really important to us." Like she's kind of the first icon of horror for women in a big, strong way in movies. So it's a really important movie. And I was like, I get that. I do get that. But she's not the movie. Like that's not the honest assessment of that movie. And I feel like Maggie Gyllenhaal was on the same page where she's like, "Can we actually make the movie about the Bride of Frankenstein? Can we do that? Is that something we can do?" And then make that a completely woman forward movie. And it's funny enough, it's Women's Month that it's being released in. Just by chance, it's Women's Month. And so, or maybe not by chance, maybe by design, but she was just like, I want this horror icon to have her moment in the sun where she is truly the focus, and the focus is what it means to be a woman in the world. And I think she does it beautifully. I don't think she even hammers it over the head. I don't think it's ham-fisted or anything like that. And every woman character that you meet in this story is giving you an honest depiction of what it's like for the lives of women now, then, or in the future. Like it's just kind of like this is what it's like to be a woman in the world. And sometimes we want to fucking go insane about it. And I think when I don't want to speak for women necessarily, but when they saw the Bride of Frankenstein do that shriek back in the 1930s, I think all the women were like, "Yes, I get it. Sometimes I want to fucking scream because of what the world is like for me." And I think Maggie Gyllenhaal takes that to the next fucking level here and does it. And you talk about a weird art house movie, is that there is like sort of interpretation of rage, of female rage, of bodily autonomy rage, like all of this stuff. Like she does it with style, Damon. I often hear the words and I hate them, and I'm sure some of the critics of this movie might even say it. They might say the phrase "style over substance," and that's bullshit to me. That I hate that phrase because the style is the substance. The style is what makes movies special. Maggie Gyllenhaal put some style on this thing, and it made it enjoyable, even for the times when it was like less coherent and more just a fever dream. I was still locked in. I still understood what she was getting after. I still understood, at least on a primal level, what the bride was going through.
This movie, ultimately, the best way to describe this movie is that Maggie Gyllenhaal gives the Bride of Frankenstein a voice. And I'm not just talking about like she talks in this movie. I'm saying like her voice resonates throughout this entire movie. She is given agency in a way that this character has never been given before. And I love also, I mean, it's even down to the title of the film because the actual character is known as the Bride of Frankenstein, and that's goes back to something I talked about a few episodes ago, where people get pissed off when they read a story and they're like, a doctor and his wife, Doctor Smith and his wife. Doesn't she have a fucking name? Like his wife, that's all she is. Um, and Maggie Gyllenhaal said very specifically it was called The Bride because it had not like the, she's not Frankenstein's property. Like she is her own person. She has her own agency. And that was a big deal to Maggie Gyllenhaal making this movie, which is called The Bride with the big exclamation point at the end. But that's really what this movie is about. It's giving the bride a voice, an agency over her own existence. Because even in life, the character, and we obviously know the character dies and is resurrected by Dr. Euphorius, or in the original book, it was Dr. Frankenstein. But like the character, when we meet the character early on, her name is Ida, and we meet her, and they don't waste a lot of time, they don't belabor a lot of time getting to her becoming the bride. But even then, they give her a voice, and it's like, what do we hear so often when women speak out? Shut up. You can't say that. You shouldn't say that. You don't have the agency to say that. And, and I'm not a woman. Can't even imagine what it's like to be in that position. But it's like, yeah, motherfucker, I have a voice. So I'm going to speak my mind. And I wish we would be even more open and apt to listen to things like that, because I think we still live in a society where we don't. And that goes, transcends a lot of different cultures when we talk about things we do wrong in this world. But this is a movie where when you meet Ida as a live person, even then they're like, we don't want to hear this from you. We don't care what you have to say. In death, she gains a voice, and she's almost like, you're going to fucking listen to me or I'm going to kill you. And sometimes I can't remember what movie it was. This is just popping in my head right now. Like, there's a movie where it's like, sometimes you can't yell at somebody. You have to smack them across the face with a fucking baseball bat to get them to listen. And that kind of is what feels like The Bride is. Like, you can't just speak. You can't just say, hey, I have something to say. Listen to me. I have important things to tell you. They just tune out, oh, you're just a woman, you're just this, you're just that, you don't have... And remember, this is set in the 1930s when women barely had the right to vote at that point. So agency is very, very limited when it comes to women at that point. There's a big storyline with Penelope Cruz's character where she's a cop, but they can't really listen to her because she can't be a detective. She can only be the assistant. But in this movie, they give the bride agency, they give her power, and at times they give her a big gun to say, you're going to fucking listen to me whether you like it or not. And that is such a powerful message in this movie, and I'm saying that as a white dude. I can't speak for women. I shouldn't even try, but I was like, damn, that was just super impressive, because like I said, you can't, sometimes people just don't want to listen when you tell them, so you have to smack them across the head with a fucking, baseball bat or a pistol whip them and be like, you need to listen to this. And I think that's what's so powerful about this movie. But as I mentioned earlier, Patrick, it's a weird movie. And yes. I mean that, it teeter, it really does. And here's the thing, it does teeter the line. There is a line in this movie where it's like, man, I was watching it and I was really enjoying it, and I can't really get into spoilers some of the really weird oddities that happen in this movie, but there were moments where I was like, man, I wonder if they're going to lose part of the audience here, because I think general audiences probably agree more with me than you when it comes to weird movies. Although I think so. I am the David Lynch fan, so try to make sense of that. But I was like, man, this teeters that line. I wonder if people are going to be digging this. And I use my girlfriend as an example because, like I said, she doesn't like weird shit. When she goes, she's like, this is dumb. I don't get it. And by the way, I understand. There's a lot of movies where people are like, I don't understand this. I don't get it. And I'm like, I understand. But she was like, no, I really dug it. I got everything. I understand what they were going for. I was like, whew, because you just don't know. Because weird movies have that, you're walking a fine line when you put a lot of weird shit in a movie. And like I said, this movie, like I said, it transcends so many different genres that you're like, are people going to stick through this? Now, it's a 2-hour movie, 2-hour and 6-minute movie. Now, if I had one small criticism, I would say I think they could have narrowed it down to an hour and 45 minutes. I think there's about 20 minutes of blustery stuff in there. I'm like, I don't think we really needed all that. You could have trimmed it down a little bit, but I'm not really complaining. It was still a very, very good experience at the theater. I was like, 20 minutes less probably would have been better. But I was just impressed by how willing Maggie Gyllenhaal and Jesse Buckley and Christian Bale were willing to just go there, like to go all the way. Like, we're not going to play nice here. We're going to go all the way, and we're going to go fucking weird, and we're going to go over the top, and we're going to, like, there's moments in this movie, Patrick, and I mean this, like, people are like, what do you mean? It's operatic. Like,
Yeah.
like I'm not. By the way, I am not an opera fan. I know a little bit about opera, but like everything is very grandiose and like it's like they're
Yes.
singing out and like very grand voices, and you're like everything is very extended and out there, very boisterous. There are so many moments in this movie, Patrick, where I was like, this is like operatic. Like there's moments where you're just like they're just screaming to the heavens, and I kind of dug it. There was no quiet moment where she's like, hey, tap you on the shoulder, listen to me. She's like, no, whap, listen to me, motherfucker. And then she gets like really, really boisterous and out and animated. And I was like, damn, like you're really going for it. And I was just super impressed by the writing and directing, obviously, Maggie Gyllenhaal. But I mean, and who's not going to be impressed by Jesse Buckley? But you got to have the right person that's willing to go for it.
Mm.
And we praise Christian Bale. And by the way, I want to be clear: Christian Bale's great in this movie, but Jesse Buckley goes for it in a
Yeah.
way that it's just like, yeah, I really couldn't see anyone else doing this. Like, there's movies where you're like, yeah, like you could put that person in that role, or like, man, I could see that guy in that role, or this girl in that role. I'm like, nobody could have played the bride but Jessie Buckley. She goes for it in such a way where it's just like she just threw down the gauntlet and said, I'm going to fucking go for it. And boy, does she. And boy, does it work.
I I'm afraid this won't be the biggest smash hit of the year. I don't think it's tracking to be. I mean I didn't know that Sinners was going to be, and then Sinners became a literally a year-long phenomenon. I mean, people love that movie. I hope that happens with this. I don't see it quite the same. I don't know if it's going to catch people quite the same. And I do actually have some criticisms, but they're for spoilers. But the reason I say that is because Jesse Buckley did for the bride what should have always been done for the bride. It she made this impression that I really, like you were saying, I really only think she could have done it. And we'll get into some performances, and if you can guess who my best performance is, I'll pay you nothing. It really takes losing yourself in it and feeling it on a deeper level. And there is a risk to that, right? Because this is a kooky movie. I took my wife to see it. She really wanted to see it. And I go, "What'd you think?" She goes, "I loved it." And believe me, sometimes she's like, "This is too weird. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. They're slow motion. I don't get it." And she was just like, "I loved this bride. She was so fun and crazy." And I think a lot of women like they stay reserved because the world tells them they got to. You're a mom, you're a teacher, you're an insurance salesman. Like you need to be a certain way. It's like, well, I want to be fucking insane sometimes. Can't I be insane sometimes? And I feel like there's so many moments in this movie where Jesse Buckley like just goes like transcends human language and just physically embodies what it means to be frustrated, what it means to be unheard, and the frustration behind that, and the anger and the rage, and also the joy, the sexuality, the complete spectrum of womanhood like just comes blazing out of Jesse Buckley in this corner and in that. And very wisely, everybody, including Maggie Gyllenhaal, writer director, knew when to just sit back and let her do her thing. And it was a thing of beauty. And I absolutely loved it. It was a lot of fun. It's not going to be my number one movie of the year. I already know that because so far my number one is still Bone Temple, and I still think Bone Temple is better than this. But this is a very good movie, and if the year was ending right now, it's probably top five easy. I haven't even thought about it yet, but what a movie, Damon. There's criticisms ahead, and that's really plot stuff, and I feel like we need to get to spoilers now to talk about that. But because they go in a direction that I did that no trailer will tell you that I really dug. That is something that was very interesting and walked that fine line. But that's for spoilers, Damon.
real quick before we get to spoilers, I want to make one comparison. I was talking about how this movie transcends a lot of genres, and this literally just popped in my head, and I was like, "Oh man, I can't believe it took me until now to think of this." Because much like this movie, I mean, this movie is literally called The Bride, and when you get into the movie, you're like, yeah, the movie is like it's Jessie Buckley's movie. The Bride is the movie, and yes, I mean, don't get me wrong, Christian Bale is there, plays a major part, and Frank's part is real. Like it's not like he's just like a side character. Like
Yeah, it is a very developed character.
yeah. You know what this movie reminds me of now that I'm thinking about it? And I read a couple interviews after watching the movie last night with Maggie Gyllenhaal talking about her influences because she saw The Bride of Frankenstein. That's what inspired her to do this because she's like, I liked it, but where the fuck is the bride? Like she's in it for 3 minutes and she doesn't even talk. This is a Frankenstein sequel. That's really what it should have been called, like Frankenstein 2. But I read a bunch of like list of movies she was influenced by, and I'm not going to rattle off all the names. I can't remember all the names. But you know what movie it really reminded me of thinking about this right now? And you're like, oh God, don't make a comparison to a Tarantino movie, but I'm going to do it. But a loose comparison. True Romance.
Oh, I see that.
Christian Slater is the star of that movie, Clarence Worley. But the movie is really about Patricia Arquette's Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's really her movie. And in the beginning of the movie, if you've seen True Romance, I'm spoiling a movie that's over 30 years old, she's a prostitute and she's, working for a pimp, played one of the best performances ever by Gary Oldman playing Drexel, which is one of my all-time favorite Gary Oldman performances. But she's being used. Like, she's just a tool for men. But as the movie moves on and carries on, as she gets her own agency, she gets her own voice, and then there's that very, very violent scene in the hotel when she's literally fighting for her life against James Gandolfini, one of his first really breakout roles. And you see that rage, you see her agency come really to the forefront in that moment. And it happens again towards the end of the movie when she's forced to save Clarence, when it looks like he's going to die, and she's forced to take over and kind of become the fucking, mama bear and take over the whole situation. And I didn't really think about it until tonight, but I'm like, that's really because when the movie starts, and this is not a spoiler, when the movie starts, it is Frank's movie. Like, you're meeting Frank or Frankenstein's monster, you're meeting him. And this is, like I said, this is literally in the book. He's trying to find a mate, just like in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. He's trying to find a mate. That's a very common part of the story. So at the beginning, you're like, oh, this is Frank's story once again. And you get 20 minutes into it, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, now it's becoming clear what this is." I think the DNA is there with True Romance. Like, you meet Clarence, you kind of he's kind of a cool, fun character. You meet Christian Slater, but then as the movie goes on, you're like, "This is not Christian Slater's movie. This is Patricia Arquette's movie. This is Alabama Worley's movie. This is her movie." And she becomes the lead. She becomes the star, and she really takes over. I don't know why it didn't pop into my head that we were literally talking about it to them. Like, there's a lot of DNA that's shared. Like, it kind of starts out one way, and by the end, you're like, Alabama is a total badass. By the end of this movie, you're like, fuck yeah, the bride is a badass.
Oh yeah, definitely. I liked her before she was the bride too. She was this woman called Ida. We'll talk about that in a second here. But I liked the whole thing that was Jessie Buckley's performance because she was a woman who just wanted to be absolutely herself in a world that says no, you can't. Which, I mean, come on. I think that's what Maggie Gyllenhaal was getting after. She was like, I really want to express what it is to be a woman in the world that is constantly telling you no, constantly telling you sit, constantly telling you shut up. Like, what does that feel like? And boy, it feels a lot like The Bride. I think of another movie like The Substance that I'll never know what it's like to be in a woman's shoes. But The Substance grabs you by the fucking nose and drags you in and goes, this is what it's like. Do you feel it? Can you feel it? There's a visceral feeling that comes forth when you're watching The Substance. And I got that again tonight with The Bride.
100%. All right, let's get into some spoilers. So if you haven't seen The Bride, it is in theaters right now. And by the way, they shot this film for IMAX. I didn't actually see it in IMAX. I kind of want to see it in IMAX now.
I did. It looked great in IMAX. Oh, my God.
Yeah, but it is a theater movie. So I know we say that all the time, go see it in the theater, but I really do mean that. Go see it in the theater if you haven't. It's definitely worth your time. And clearly you can tell Patrick and I really enjoyed this film. I would agree with what you said earlier. It's definitely going to be top 10. It would be a lot to knock this one out. I don't know where it's going to rank at the end of the year, but right now it's definitely top 10, maybe top 5. Check out patreon.com/rewind of the living dead if you want early access to this episode or all of our episodes. We put these up as soon as we record them, and they actually come out days later on our regular podcast feed. So patreon.com/rewind of the living dead. We also put up, we have episode reviews on there from Alien Earth and It Welcome to Derry. We also do our Film Core podcast over there. We do films that are not horror films. We just did Heat, which is one of my all-time favorite films. We've done Superman, we've done The Smashing Machine, we've done a few others. And we're actually planning, I'll go ahead and make the announcement now. I know you know this is coming, Patrick. We are going to do an Oscars wrap-up show specifically for our Patreon. The Oscars coming up just a couple of weeks away, about a week and a half away. We are going to do an Oscar post show, basically, talking about the Oscars. You and I are big award nerds. And obviously this year means more because, Sinners is up for a bunch of awards, Frankenstein.
It's our year.
Yeah. So we were going to do it anyways, but it really makes sense to do it this year. But that's going to be a Patreon exclusive. So if you want our Oscar breakdown, you got to go to patreon.com/rewind of the living dead. With that being said, Patrick, let's get into spoilers. And really, I mean, the reality is that the plot is pretty simple. Frankenstein shows up in Chicago in the 1930s, and he meets Dr. Euphorius, and he's like, I need a mate. I need someone. I'm lonely. I've been alive for 100 years. And she resists at first. She's not into it at all, but he basically eventually convinces her to do this because he's so lonely and so sad, basically a sad sack of a person or of a creature. And, she realizes, he's not the monster they made him out to be. He looks like a monster, but he's not actually a monster. And so she finally relents. And we meet early on in the movie, we meet a woman named Ida, who is at a restaurant with a bunch of gangsters. She's hanging out with a bunch of gangsters. And that's where she's imbibed by the spirit of Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley, of course, is the 18-year-old girl who actually wrote Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, if you want to get in the full title. And we meet Mary Shelley, and Mary Shelley basically possesses, for lack of a better word.
Totally possesses.
And gives her the ability basically to sense and feel what other dead women are feeling or have gone through. She gives her that ability basically by imbibing herself into Ida. And Ida kind of when she first gets possessed by Mary Shelley's spirit, she basically outbursts and starts telling the world of all the wrongs that have been done to women around her. And her sort of boyfriend, the guy she's with and who works for this gangster, is like, you got to shut up. You got to stop talking. You're basically outing all the evil shit this guy's done in the middle of his bar. And so they take her to the back, and she's still kind of wigging out. And long story short, they chuck her down a flight of stairs, or she falls down a flight of stairs, and she dies.
Yeah, she quote-unquote falls.
Yeah,
yes.
Falls. Yeah, she quote-unquote falls. And so she's buried and dead, and then that's where, obviously Frank and Dr. Euphorius dig her up, and they resurrect her. When she's resurrected, she doesn't have any memory. She doesn't remember who she is. She doesn't remember what happened to her. And in the beginning, Frank is just like, well, you're mine. You're my bride. You're my wife. You're my woman. And at first she's like, okay, but then as time passes, she's like, hey, I want to go dancing. I want to have she wants to get out in the world and kind of live. And Frank is kind of used to living in the shadows. And there is a real connection there. I think what Maggie Gyllenhaal does so brilliantly very early on is she takes away that notion that the bride belongs to Frank. She early on, we do not go through 90% of the movie thinking that, yes, he's telling her that they're together and they've been in love and he proposed to her and all these kind of things because she has no memories, and he's trying to kind of build that spirit of they've been together forever and she just came back to life.
Yeah, it's like Overboard.
yeah, exactly. 100%. Yes, it's Kurt Russell. Oh yeah, we were together. But as time passes, and it's not that she. And by the way, when you're saying he's telling her these things, he's manipulating her. No, I mean he needs a mate. He wants to love her. He wants to even when they first dig her up, he's like, you can't turn her. She's too beautiful. She wouldn't want to. I don't deserve.
Yeah, I don't deserve her. Yeah.
They don't make Frank an asshole guy. I guess what I'm getting at. He's not a evil person, but he loves her and he falls in love with her and he wants her to genuinely fall in love with him. And over time, she does. But she also finds her own voice and her own agency in saying that, I'm my own woman. I'm not Frankenstein's bride. I'm just the fucking bride. And throughout this, we see her also starting to inherit the spirits of other dead women and speaking out to the, giving voice to the voiceless, for lack of a better word. And I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but that's really the spirit of the movie. And then really what happens is early on, Frank and the bride get into a back alley fight with a couple of guys who are trying to assault the bride. Frank stops them and literally stomps them and murders them. And they're on the run from that point on, basically trying to avoid the cops because they are basically murderers, and the cops are on their trail because they killed a couple of people, and they end up killing a cop, chucking him off a train. And so, really, it becomes a cross country Bonnie and Clyde story in a way where they're on the run from the law, and the law, played of course by Peter Skarsgård, who is of course Maggie Gyllenhaal's real life husband, and the great Penelope Cruz. They're on the hunt for the bride and Frank, and they're going from Chicago to New York to all over Niagara Falls, and they're just traveling around trying to find them. So that's really what the movie becomes.
What I love is very early on. I mean, I'm talking like the first moment that she's sort of awake, and I think they go to feed her some breakfast. She immediately starts sliding stuff off the table like a little brat or like a cat. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. She's with this resurrection has sort of fused Mary Shelley into her being, and Mary Shelley in this afterworld, which I love this element. I love this possession element, which I did not see coming at all. But she's just like, I'm over here in the afterlife with a lot of missed potential. She brings that up. She goes, like I was going to write this book and I never got to it because disease took me. She goes, but that in that book, I was going to say everything that I really wanted to say because I never got to say it because I did Frankenstein and I had to kind of adhere to what a woman was allowed to write. But I had these other ideas. I had these real feelings. I know what it's like to be a woman. I can't fucking hold it in any longer. And you're my vehicle. You're my vessel. I'm going to use you for that. And we're going to unleash hell on the world because I can't shut up about what I need to say. Like, I got to do this. And when Frank stomps out these dudes who are trying to fucking do this to her, to me, that creates the catalyst, the on the run moment for the rest of the movie. But that becomes to me a metaphor for when you stomp out the bullshit, the system that puts you in the dirt, that puts your nose in the mud, that puts the boot on your neck, you become the monster to the system. And that's really what it was. Is there was a twofold system here. There was the police, but the police, they were on the take with these gangsters, the gangsters that she hung out with, the gangsters that didn't like she talked so much. All these people together were in cahoots to sort of do bad things to people and exploit other people. Boy, does that sound familiar. It's really weird how this story just kind of keeps making sense in the real world. But when the people speak out against that, they're the monsters. They're the bad guys. We have to go after them. They are the villains. Go destroy them. Do whatever you can. That's the other side of the story. And then you kind of get the meandering and the fever dreaming of the bride and Frank just trying to be alive and awake in the world because they both feel like outcasts. Frank is certainly someone who's always lived in the shadows, and certainly he doesn't even know how to be himself. He's actually learning how to be more himself through the bride, through because she's unbridled, not no pun intended. But she's like, I don't want to filter myself in any way, shape, or form. I want to be as me as I can be. And that starts to rub off on him. And they take this cross country trek with the law on their heels, but you're rooting for them the whole time. Now, the one thing, Damon, and I'm very curious your thoughts on this. The one thing that I felt, and you were like, yeah, this movie could be about 20 minutes shorter. That was the Peter Sarsgaard of it all. Peter Sarsgaard plays Detective Jake Wiles, and as you mentioned, Myrna Malloy, played by Penelope Cruz. They are on the case, and it's clear Myrna is so much better at this than he is. But he's the proxy because a woman's not supposed to be the detective. That's the whole thing. But deep down, it's very clear that Jake has something for the bride, and there's an implication, and I do mean a very thin implication, that they have some sort of history together because he's in cahoots with the gangsters and all that stuff. So he's probably seen her in the clubs. He's probably had a little fun with her back in the day. Their paths crossed and all that stuff. But I was like, this is taking up a lot of air. And I wasn't even necessarily in love with the investigation, but it made sense. And then there's the gangster of it all, which is the Zlatko Buric character Lupino. I I think, and call me crazy here, Damon. I'd love to hear your take. I would have done one of two things. One, I would have gotten rid of the Lupino idea entirely because when you really think about it, by the end of this movie, she never, the bride, the new reanimated version of Ida, never even really cares who the fuck Lupino is. She knows what he did, but there's no tie to her. She never gains that kind of memory back to go, Lupino is the one who had me taken out. Like there's no deep connection there. He's just something in the background of her life that has to be swept away. So I would have either gotten rid of the Lupino character or I would have composited Lupino and Jake and made Peter Sarsgaard the Lupino character and made Myrna the detective that nobody listens to because she's a woman. And I would have truncated that because I don't think those two competing storylines of Jake and Lupino to me were just I don't know, they were dead air. They to me they didn't add to this movie.
Well, the Jake story pays off towards the end when he reveals to Penelope Cruz's character that basically he had Ida as his confidential informant. He was actually a
Right.
good cop. He wasn't on the take from the gangsters. He was actually a good cop.
He said he was
Right.
corrupt though.
No, he said I was trying to take down Lupino and she was my way in. She was using her to get information about Lupino and then she died and he never did anything about it. Like she died and he just like swept it under the rug and didn't that was the corruption was like he just didn't do anything to avenge her or do anything because he couldn't prove what actually happened to her because she fell down a flight of stairs, quote unquote. But he reveals like he felt bad. Like when he doesn't recognize her at first and then he does recognize her, he confesses that like she was basically his confidential informant and she was the mole inside Lupino's organization. He was trying to bring Lupino down, but then when she died, he just kind of like move on. And so it was his guilt talking of like it happened to her. He didn't want it to happen to her. He actually it seemed like the way they were setting it up is like Jake had feelings for Ida.
Yeah.
He really liked her, but then he basically she died, and he didn't do anything to avenge it. Like he just let it go, and he's like, all right, back to the drawing board. And, like I think that was that guilt speaking when he saw her again because he didn't quite recognize her, and then he did. So like in the sense of like I think there was a corruption there, but like I think it was his guilt more than the actual corruption of him saying like
Yeah.
I feel bad that she died working for me and I never did anything about it. And like at the end he basically gives Penelope Cruz's character his detective shield and he said, you go do this because I'm not fit for this job anymore. I didn't mind that, and I didn't even mind the Lupino character. It just took too long to get back there. And what we
Yeah.
find out throughout the movie is the bride. There's this great scene, probably the best scene in the entire movie, if we're being honest. My opinion, not your opinion. My opinion is when they go and I think they're in New York, and Frank finally gets to meet Ronnie Reed, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. First time Maggie Gyllenhaal's ever directed her brother. It was kind of sweet. She talked about how much fun it was to work with her brother. And Ronnie Reed is this famous actor, and the reason that Frank idolizes him is because when he was younger Ronnie Reed couldn't walk, and he eventually learned how to walk, but he had to wear like a club shoe to be able. And he dances now. He's like a very famous actor, but he was born with like a disability, more or less. The best way to say it.
Polio. He had polio.
That's what it was, polio. Yeah, and he couldn't. He lost his ability to walk, and like they had to like go through surgeries, and he eventually got back. And now he's like this huge movie star. And Frank looked up to him because he's like, this is a guy who had every disadvantage in the world, and he made the most of it. And he's like, he basically considered Ronnie Reed his hero. And when he finally gets to meet Ronnie Reed, when they go to this like really posh party, Ronnie basically is nice to him for a minute and then kind of turns on him and basically, all right, I'm not really your type, man. Stop hitting on me. Like kind of making jokes at him. And eventually, the bride grabs a gun and she like basically holds the entire party hostage, and that's where she starts revealing all the dead women that have been wronged. She feels in this room. She's like, this happened to this woman. You did this to this woman. She's like basically pointing the gun and basically accusing all these fucking men of the evil shit they've done to women. And it's a really powerful scene, and that becomes really, really publicized, and women start following in the bride's actions. So women start putting the black streak across their face, and they're basically like, all right, we're gonna fuck with these men who fuck with us. And so the very end of the movie is Lupino getting his because the women have taken on the character of the bride and they go after him and they just like basically, kidnap him and fucking murder him, cut his tongue out, which is what he does to these women. So like I didn't mind the Lupino character and I didn't mind the detective character. It just took too long to get there. Like the Peter Skarsgård character is fine, but they spend a lot of time with him kind of meandering and kind of talking, like being a bit of a sad sack. And it's like, I wish he would have just gotten quicker to the point of like how he knew Ida, like she was his informant and she died under his watch. The Lupino character, like you meet him in the beginning, she dies, and then you do see him once more in the kind of the middle when he sends his goons to go after, like when he realizes this is Ida, or he thinks it's Ida. And he's like, you gotta finish the job. She's not dead. They don't know she's been reanimated, but they're like, she's not dead. You gotta go finish the job. And then he fucks off again, and then he pops up at the very end when they get revenge, and it's almost like either have him be a character or don't, because like he's kind of there, not, and then there again at the end. It's almost like because so much of this movie becomes the frustration of the system. And what I mean by that is like when you read these stories in the newspaper about a woman who's assaulted and she kills her assaulter, and they're like, well, she's got to go to jail. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Fuck him. Like, okay, you stabbed him in the neck. Good. You ripped his fucking throat out. Good. Fuck him. Cut his nuts off too. Like, that's the reality of a situation. Like, why should a woman who's getting assaulted go to jail for killing her assaulter, killing the man who was assaulting her? Me personally, I was trying to fuck her up on the fucking front lawn and say, look what happens when you do this shit, okay?
Yeah.
But, like, that's the world we live in. And so when she goes to that scene in that ballroom, she's basically like, you did all this evil shit to these women and you never paid for it. You never did. They never got justice. And so I almost would have rather it been focus on the wrong system, the police, like, because this entire movie, like, the whole murder at the beginning of the movie is them, Frank stopping two men who are trying to assault the bride. Like, they're literally trying to assault her. And he kills them. Why should he be in trouble? Like, my mind is like, fuck those guys. Like, they got what they deserved. But the world says, oh, he's a murderer. You got to go on. So, like, there's another scene later in the movie where they get pulled over by a set of cops. And once again, the creepy cop is like, get out of the car. And you can tell what he's going to do. Like, he's ready to assault the bride. Like, he's literally, like, touching her, and it gets really creepy. And then Frank pulls the gun and shoots him. Now, in my head, I'm like, deserved. You got what you deserve, motherfucker. But once again, the system tells you they murdered a cop. They got to go to jail. They got to die. They got to get captured or whatever. So that was the stronger story for me. And I almost kind of wish like they had focused more on that. And if I don't mind they included the Peter Skarsgård character and even the Lupino character. They just should have truncated it down. Like, it should have just been truncated down into like a much smaller version of the story because they keep circling back to it and it almost feels unnecessary.
It really does. That's why I was saying composite them into one character. However you mix it up, however you want to do that, or minimize the Detective Jake down to just like, he becomes a Deus Ex Machina in that last moment and goes like, she was an informant for me and I did this to save her because of that. And I'm a fucked up guy. Yeah, I instead of the long drawn out story of him and her, it didn't work. And that's why I said make Peter Sarsgaard Lupino, because obviously Maggie Gyllenhaal's married to Peter and she's like, he's a great actor. And he is, by the way, he's a really good actor. So but I think it would have been, he would have been, I felt like that character wasn't strong. And so I was just like, this is wasting time. Like, overall, we're kind of wasting time. The fun and games of the movie is the Bonnie and Clyde aspect, where it's like, we are going to expose the system and change, and change and empower the public to take matters into their own hands because the system is never coming to save you. I love that. I really love that. And more of that would have been better, or just less of the other guys, which I'm honest. I mean, when I say literally, I feel like at the end, Ida didn't even know who the fuck Jake was. Like, she was like, who are you? Okay, great. I'm going to go do my thing. And it's like,
it was like,
wow, we spent a lot of time on that.
I compared it to True Romance, another movie that I would say this movie has a lot of DNA with is Thelma and Louise, which is a tremendous movie. Ridley Scott.
Yes. Or The Legend of Billie Jean is also a kind of this movie too. Yeah.
like Thelma and Louise, the entire movie, the premise is like, two women go on the run. One woman gets assaulted, the other woman stops the assault and shoots the guy. Now, in my mind, all right, got what he deserved. But the world
Right.
says, oh no, you can't do that, and so they become the fugitives on the run, very much like what happens in this movie. And so, like, I think that was the stronger theme of like the system not working for the people who've actually been wronged, and because the bride is, has this giant crazy hair and the black streak across her face, the black tongue, and then Frank, of course, is just like a stitched together monster. I mean, literally, they call him a monster. You can't believe that he would be a good person, or he would not just do.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
just draw the pitchforks and torches like that. He's just an evil guy. No, he stopped two men from assaulting a woman. You wish we fucking putting a pin on his hand, a pin on him, and saying, "Good job, man, way to go, bravo." Fuck those two.
Yeah.
But that's not the world we live in. That's not the system we live in. So I think that Thelma and Louise of it all is a little bit there too, where it's like I think that would have been the stronger thing, because that is what the movie is for about 90% of the movie. Like that really is them on the run, and they continuously run into situations where they're forced to basically fight for their lives, and they keep running into corruption, whether it's a corrupt cop or whoever it is, and they have to defend themselves. Like they're not just doing shit. Like they're not literally Bonnie and Clyde. They're not robbing and killing people to survive, crossing the country and becoming criminals. The people that end up crossing them, that wrong them, get dealt with. And
Yeah.
in a just world, we'd be like, bravo, way to go. Like, and I'm not saying vigilante justice, but I'm saying like, hey, they fucked with them first. Like, you deserve what you get. But that's not the world we live in. I think that would have been a stronger theme, the Thelma and Louise kind of thing, where it's like they're just on the run for something bad they did, which is, exactly how the movie kind of the catalyst of them being on the run, those two guys in the alley. That would have been a stronger theme. We could have just left the Lupino thing to the side. Like,
Yes.
I did like, because we find out at the beginning, like she's in this gangsters club and she's yelling about Lupino, and that's when they chuck her down the stairs. I think it could have just been like the guys are trying to like assault her because God knows it happens in real life. Like she's drunk or whatever, and then they just end up like she fights them, and they're like, all right, this isn't where they're trouble, and they chuck her down a flight of stairs. We didn't need the Lupino character, to be honest. I think I don't mind the Jake character, but Jake's character really ties back to Lupino, so you could kind of eliminate both of them and just make this a movie about like righteous justice and the wrongs that are done to the people in this world and how fucked up it is.
It opens with her sitting at this table, and this guy James is like, he's being real pushy. He's being a creep. He's being a real creep, and he forces her to eat this oyster, and then she sort of barfs it back at him because she really is just kind of sick of his shit. But it's the 1930s, and she's kind of got to take it. And I feel like in that moment, if Mary Shelley had possessed her, then she stood up on that table and she just called out every man in the room for all his bullshit behavior, because that's kind of what was being set up, is like all the men in this room kind of being pigs, and we're fucking sick of it. And here's what you're accused of, or here's what you're guilty of. That's what you're guilty of. I'm fucking sick of this shit. Him and Clyde drag her out, and then they throw her. And that could be it. That's literally enough catalyst to keep this movie going, to just keep calling out the system for all its wrongs. Damon, the audience wants it. There's a bunch of guys on a list right now. I don't need to get into it. The public wants justice for corruption, for abuse of power. You could do a whole movie just like that. Now I know when she wrote this movie, most of the stuff hadn't come to light yet, but you don't need all that other stuff to do it. Her and Frank, a great team out there looking for justice, Damon. I mean, what more do you want?
And I understand the theme she's going for. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like that's what she's showing. Like the gangster has power, he's corrupt. The cop has power, and even he's corrupt. Or the cops in general, not just one cop, not just Peter Skarsgård's character. The cops in general, they're corrupt. So I understand the theme she's going for. Like the absolute power corrupts absolutely. I get it. But I think you could have gotten even stronger by just focusing on like just the cops, like, and not even like the gangster of it all, or not even really Peter Skarsgård being the like, because actually like the Peter Skarsgård, like you could still have that character, and him just like basically towards the end of the movie he confesses that he knew Ida and what she, how he got her involved with Lupino and all that kind of stuff, trying to use her to get access to his organization. But really, he could have just been like, I'm not doing you any good. Like you're a better, like he says it. I actually appreciate that about the writing and the character. He's like, you're a better detective than me, but you have to kind of hide behind me because the world won't accept you as a detective because you're a woman. So unfortunately, that's the world we live in. But he knows, like he tells her, "You're better than me at this." I think the conclusion would have been better or stronger if he's just like, "You're clearly better than me. I'm bowing out. Like all I'm doing is holding you back
Yeah.
right now. Like I'm a
Yeah, he
fucking
didn't need to
lead weight.
connect. He didn't need to connect to
Yeah,
Ida. That didn't
I
help anything.
like I'm a lead weight pulling you back. I'm dead weight. Get rid of me. Go do your job." And then and then like there's a moment where they're at a drive-in where they go to a drive-in and they hunt them down. The cops show up, and at that moment is when Frank tells the bride, like he's like, "We were never really together. Like I told you this fabricated story because I wanted you to love me and I wanted to love you," and like kind of comes clean with everything that happened. And of course, the bride kind of revolts and she's like, "What the fuck?" And they kind of fight in that moment, and then the cops all kind of swoop in, but at the same time, there's the gangsters on their trail as well. Eliminate the gangsters, just make it the cops.
Yeah.
And then in the fighting, Frank gets shot in the head and dies, and it's like a very tragic moment. You're like, holy shit! Like you don't see that coming, and she obviously picks up Frank, and then they drive back. She escapes, and they drive to get away, and she's trying to take him back to Chicago to Dr. Euphorius to say, hey, you got to bring him back. Like now, I actually do care. Now I actually do love him. I see how much he cared about me, and now I care about him. That was the central theme of the story. That's what needed to be the focus. And by the way, it sounds like I'm complaining a lot, or you're complaining, however we're going to say it. It really isn't. It's just like there's moments where that's where I said like it could have been 20 minutes shorter. The 20 minutes
Yeah.
are really just Peter Skarsgård and that little bit of Lupino. Like you just didn't need them. Like I think you
No.
could combine them into one character. I think just eliminate them both.
You could have done that too. I mean, because everything else is fun. It's this sort of like kind of breakneck pace, wild, there's musical numbers. There's not singing. They're just dancing, and there's just kind of sounded like unbridled freedom, and a big fuck you to the system that's fucking people over. That's a movie people can get behind, and you could still get behind this movie very much so. Like it's still a very good time. I was just like, yeah, it didn't need these things.
Real quick before we get to categories, let's talk about the ending because, as I mentioned, the bride takes Frank back to Dr. Euphorius. And the one thing we learn about Dr. Euphorius throughout this all is like she's very hesitant to do this because she doesn't, like what we learn about her is that her and her husband were both scientists and they're doing very experimental surgeries, very experimental things. And they're like, we can't do this to other people. So literally they used each other as their experimental subjects. And during the experimentation, her husband died. And when she reanimated him, he didn't remember her. He didn't know anything about her. And so, like, it wasn't what she thought it would be. Like, he's going to die, but I'm just going to bring him back. And now we're going to be together again. When she brought him back, he didn't remember her, their life together, their marriage, none of that. And so she was like, when the bride shows up with Frank after he's been shot, she's like, you need to bring him back. And she's just like, I won't do it again because I've gone through it. Like, my husband, I tried to bring him back. And when I did, he didn't even remember me. And so, basically the bride's like begging her to do it, but at the same time, the cops are swooping down on the building, the gangsters are swooping down on the building, everyone's there. And lo and behold, as the experiment is finally Dr. Euphorius relents and she's going to do it, but then at the very end, cops show up and they find the bride, they find Frank, and they in a hail of gunfire, they shoot them both dead. And the gangster gets caught, the guy, is it Myrna? Am I getting that?
Clyde. Myrna catches Clyde.
Myrna catches Clyde, and she basically shows up, and like at one point she's just like, you know what, fuck all of y'all. Like she shows up to a cops meeting, the cops are ignoring her. She goes to the secretary. She's like, where do I need to go? And the secretary is like, you need to go here. And she's like, fuck all, and she does their honor. So long story, and by that point, even Myrna's like, I don't think these are criminals. I don't think they're bad people. I think they've just been wronged by the system, and they're not these terror. They're not these awful.
Myrna would understand that because Myrna knows firsthand that the system doesn't give a fuck about certain kinds of people.
And so they die in a hail of gunfire, and it's like kind of a sad, tragic ending. Of course, the gangster does get caught, and by that point, it's almost like in a weird way. You mentioned Joker earlier. Like I know it's a weird comparison, like how Joker's message gets out to the world, like V for Vendetta, where it's like by that point the message is out there. The women have taken agency. They are now becoming the brides themselves, which is where I mentioned the very end is where they kill Lupino and cut his tongue out, and it's not the bride. It's just all these women with the big black streak across their face. But the very end of the movie is Dr. Euphorius, after the cops have left and everyone's gone, she does finish the experiment at the very end. lights the electricity on, which by the way, I like that they didn't go too deep into like the whole resurrection of it all. They're just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, she puts this like resurrection fluid in there and shocks them and they come back alive. And the very end of the movie is the electricity goes off and you see the bride and Frank's hands clashing together and holding, and that's, kind of like, do they have a happy ending? We don't really know. Well, the actual ending is the post credit, which is where they kill Lupino. But yeah, so you kind of get a little bit of like a happy ending where you're like, they're back together. But as we've learned, they're not going to have any memories. So they're going to have to build a new life together, or we have to assume that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I dug it. I dug it. I think it's weird to say I want more of it. We're not doing a remake, sequel, or leave it alone this week, but it's like I just love watching Jesse Buckley on screen. I guess we're gonna get into that in a second here.
Yeah, but overall, like, and I know we spent a lot of time talking about like the one part of the movie we didn't like, but like as I said, that movie that doesn't ruin it by any stretch of the imagination. It just could have been truncated, like the Lupino especially. Like, not even like I said, even Peter Skarsgård's character, which obviously his relationship to Ida ties back to Lupino, but even that, it's almost like you could have just had him be this like kind of meandering, not very good at his job cop, and he kind of comes to realization like, you know what, I just need to get out of your way and let you do your damn thing because you're the boss here, and he hands off to Myrna and she becomes the detective. But it doesn't ruin the movie. It just drags it out a little bit unnecessarily. But ultimately, the payoff still works, and everything else in the movie pays off because, like I said, that's why it didn't really matter the Lupino character and even the Peter Skarsgård character, because really it's about Frank and the bride being on the run for things that they did. They're being hounded for being monsters when really all they did was fight for survival. When the system worked against them, when two guys tried to assault the bride, and Frank stopped them. When a cop pulls them over and he's like, hey, once you get outside the car, I'll let you go for this ticket, but you're going to have to do something for me. Wink, wink, nod, nod, which we all know what that means. And Frank's like, no, the fuck you're not. Shoots him to the eye. And in real world, or what we should do is like, way to go, Frank. Good job, buddy. That's not how the system works. That's really the central theme of the story, is how fucked up it is, and especially for women, because there's never justice for women the way it should be. And that's really the central theme of the movie, and that's really the strongest parts of this movie.
Damn right.
So, Patrick, let's get into categories. And our first category, as always, is best performance. We have the same best performance. Let's just go ahead and celebrate the great, soon to be Oscar winner, Jessie Buckley.
Second time Oscar winner, right? She's already won an Oscar, hasn't she?
Did she?
I thought she did. I thought she's a two-timer. Anyway, it is Jessie Buckley. She is 100% the best performance. And if you have not seen Hamnet, grab a tissue and go see it, because holy shit, she's just an incredible, incredible actor. And I do feel like she's Oscar nominated, by the way. She was Oscar nominated for Lost Daughter, which was actually Maggie Gyllenhaal's other movie. So I think she was born to do this. I think there are people in the world that when I see them, I go, "Oh, nothing was going to stop you, was it?" Like she has some wildfire in her that cannot be put out, and this role was made for her. And clearly Maggie Gyllenhaal understood the assignment. She was like, "This is what I want out of the bride. Who can do it? Oh, there's only one person who can do this. This is the unstoppable Jessie Buckley, who is at all times in this movie electric, at all times in this movie magnetic and charismatic and interesting and funny and dangerous." And like, you love it. Like, it's everything that, we ever loved about the kind of the badass guys and anti-heroes of any other generation or whatever. Jessie Buckley could embody that all in this one character that didn't feel at all like a monster. She just felt like a woman who was completely in control of who she was. That's sexy. That's cool. That's something like you want to aspire to. She did all that. She just did. Even watching her take like the hail of gunfire, and the way she used her body to just fucking let it all hang out. And I was like, God damn, dude. Like, she even gets shot better than most people. Like, she's just insanely talented.
when she has that scene in that ballroom where she basically takes Ronnie Reed hostage and she's basically waving her gun around, telling all the men in the room the way they've wronged the dead women that are bouncing around inside of her head. And she's like, "You did this, and this happened to her, and blah blah blah." I'm watching this and I'm just like, God, just give her all the fucking awards. Just give her every award. Like I just want her to
She's
win
so
everything.
good.
She's just so and she melts into this role. And what I mean by that is like when certain people play a role, they just disappear into it. It happens a lot when you get like those biography, biopics, which I'm not a big fan of
I
biopics,
don't
but there
like
are good
those.
ones. There are good ones out there where you're like they really do. You kind of the actor disappears, and I've just recently rewatched The Wolf of Wall Street, which is one of my all time favorite films, and that is technically about a real person. But when you watch that, you're just like, yeah, it's Leonardo DiCaprio, but he becomes the character in that movie, the actual Wolf of Wall Street. He becomes Jordan Belfort, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't even see Leo in this. He becomes, and I like I said,
Yeah.
I watched interviews with the real Jordan Belfort, and he's very manic, and I can definitely see comparisons, but like he creates his own version of that, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't see Leonardo DiCaprio, I see Jordan Belfort, I see the Wolf of Wall Street. Or watching Joe Pesci become Tommy and Tommy DeVito and Goodfellas. Just certain people you see kind of meld into that role. Like obviously I knew this was Jessie Buckley throughout, but I'm just like, gosh, she just disappears into this role. So like she took it on and just like I'm going to go for it all the way. And even though like my opinion of the movie Men, like she was the saving grace of that movie. Like she just goes for it and she just steals the show in that one as well. And yeah, like give her all the awards, give her all the opportunity, like, whatever she wants to do. She's also a musician. I don't know if you knew that or not. She's actually a musician
Oh,
on
I
top
know
of
that.
this. So yeah, whatever she wants, man, give her the awards. And I'm sure probably because this is like a it's a very genre film and it's coming out in March, which is usually a doom for a movie. Probably won't get a lot of awards coming next year, but she should. Like this is that kind of performance where I'm like, yeah, at the end of the year, we're gonna still be talking about Jessie Buckley.
We might be, Damon. It's not the this is not the craziest slate of movies this year. She could still be on the short list for Oscar nominations for The Bride.
Yeah. Patrick, next category, let's talk about our MVP. Of course, our Ken Foray Banana Hammock MVP award, named after great character actor Ken Foray from the movie From Beyond, where he jumps down a flight of stairs and into a basement to kill a creature wearing nothing more than a thong bikini, which is what Patrick's actually wearing on the broadcast right now, if you haven't seen it.
That's true.
Patrick, who gets your MVP for The Bride?
My MVP goes to the phenomenal, the always incredible Christian Bale, but not because he was incredible in this movie, which he was, and he was good. He knew that it was her stage, and he was there to compliment her. Also, what I loved about how Maggie Gyllenhaal wrote Frank's character is that he wasn't, like you said, like a shithead. He didn't have a weirdness to him. He was sensitive, he was interesting, and he was complex. There's a moment in the movie where the bride goes to him and like, hey, we should fuck, it'll help us sleep, it's been crazy, and she kind of jumps on him. He's like, hey, I need to slow down, because he'd never done this before. And here she is, this wild woman. I mean, she's literally a wildfire, and he's just like, I don't know how to handle you yet. I'm just being honest. And I love that. I love that about him. And he knew to play it down here. He's like, I'm going to play it here for you because I'm playing the complimentary notes. I'm not trying to outdo you. I'm trying to compliment you. That's an MVP, Damon. That's the exact definition of it.
That's the guy blocking for the wide receiver, the running back in football, like the unheralded person. Like they don't score the
Yeah.
touchdown, but they make sure that the person holding the ball does get the touchdown. He is blocking for Jessie Buckley in this movie. He's like, get out of her way, let her
Hmm.
fucking shine. And he's just like, move, move, move. Here she is. Here's the motherfucking bride. And that's really what Christian Bale's strength is in this movie, and it works so well. So, Patrick, everyone listening to this podcast, yourself included, I know you're thinking this. You're going to say Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Sure, why not?
You think that's what I'm going to say. I know you think
I
that's what I'm going to say.
Is it Quentin Tarantino? That would be shocking.
No, it's not Quentin Tarantino. But Maggie Gyllenhaal deserves a ton of credit. But my actual MVP, and this just stood out to me, and I am absolutely going to butcher the fuck out of this name, Hidor Guadadotor, the composer. She's Icelandic, and I have no
Yeah.
absolutely idea whatsoever how to pronounce her name. But she has done a lot of music. She actually did the music for
Joker.
Chernobyl. Well, she did Joker too. No, that was Ludwig. Wasn't that
Oh,
Ludwig?
That was Ludwig. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, Hildur did
yeah.
something else that I really liked though.
She
But yeah,
did.
she did
Let's
Chernobyl.
Yeah, she did Chernobyl. She did. I'm trying to look into her thing. Oh no, she did do Joker.
No,
You're
she
right.
did do
I guess she did.
Joker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she,
yeah, I
you're
knew
right.
it.
Yeah. The damn Icelandic, like the Nordic names, are fucking with me here. But she did. Yeah, she did Chernobyl, which I remember that very well. But she wasn't the original composer. They actually had somebody else in this movie, and then she came in later and did the music. But I was real like the score, and not just the score, but the music in general. There's a couple like there's actually a live performance in this movie from a band. I think it's called Fever. I think is what the name is, or something like that.
Hmm.
They're performing in one of the clubs where the bride and Frank go. But like, I just thought the music played so well because this movie takes place in the 1930s. So of course you get that kind of like old timey, jazz, like I don't know what you really want to call it, like the doo wop, kind of like that, that style of music from that time. Like not quite Frank Sinatra,
Definitely
big band,
roaring 20s kind of big
big
band
band,
stuff.
yeah, big
Yeah.
band stuff, and it worked so well, and I think it played perfectly. And like I remember back in January, a movie we didn't review, which I kind of bummed we didn't because it was like shockingly good. A movie called Primate. Did you ever see Primate? Did you end up seeing that?
Oh, Primate. Yeah, oh, yeah.
So much fun. Way
Yeah,
better than I had any
solid
business
creature
being.
feature. A lot of fun.
Yeah. The soundtrack to that movie was so good. It came out on vinyl, and I bought it immediately. I pre-ordered it immediately. I was like, because it sounded like John Carpenter. It was like that synth
Yeah, Cynthia.
1980s sound. I was like, oh, did John Carpenter do it? No, he didn't. But I was like, I gotta have it. And today they put the Bride score up for sale, and I bought it immediately because I'm like this helped make the movie. The music, the background, the score of a movie can really make or break your film. It really can. Like it really, like you don't think it's important until you realize how much it plays a part. And I thought the score really added elements of power and just like so much extra in every scene that you can hear the music. And that is obviously credit to the composer who, once again, I'm trying not to butcher and murder her Icelandic name, but she's awesome. So Hildur, how do you pronounce your fucking name? You're awesome. Sorry I can't pronounce your name. I apologize profusely. I should have like looked it up on YouTube beforehand, but I looked. I was like, I can get it. No, I can't. But
That last name, I'm looking at that and going, I don't know where to start with that at all. But Hildur is a tremendous, tremendous talent. And I think I was writing, I can't remember what I was writing. I might have been writing The Path, and I had Hildur's Joker on repeat. That's just a haunting, absolutely haunting soundtrack. And I think a great composer knows what the script is. Like they're not just like I think John Williams is amazing, Hans Zimmer is prolific. Like these guys, they do great, but they sort of there's almost a signature sound, and I would argue that Hildur brings something very unique to every movie, and it's almost like it's another serious character in the movie that you can't help but notice and take her music really takes shape and just I'm really a big fan of what she can do.
have you ever seen those behind the scenes videos, like whatever they do sometimes where they'll put like a scene up and they're like, imagine this scene without the score, and you watch, you're like, oh my God, like don't ever do that again. Like put the score back in.
Yeah, it feels dead.
You don't realize how much a score matters until you see a film without it, like a certain scene or something. You're like, yeah, this needs music right here. And that to me, I think that's the Bride. Like there's just so much music. This is like I said, it's almost a musical in a way. There's like dance numbers, full on dance numbers with Frank and the Bride, and Frank has a lot of fantasy scenes where he's like imagining himself in Ronnie Reed's
Yeah.
character dancing. And I was like, damn, like it's really effective. And that again goes back to Hildur for doing the music. So I loved it. Patrick, next category, best gore. Now, this isn't like I said. This movie transcends a lot of genres. It definitely tinges on horror, but I wouldn't say it's horrific. Although there are some things that happen that are horrific,
Hmm.
but there was gore. So, Patrick, what gets your best gore in The Bride?
My best gore, I'll call it the tongue kiss, Damon, because there is a point where the bride decides that she's heard enough, and I think it from the cop. Who was it from? Who did she do that? It was the cop. The cop that
After,
was feeling her up and being very, very, very inappropriate with her. She jumps on top of him And she's like, I'm tired of hearing from you. Enough out of your mouth, because he was being very mouthy with her. And she just reaches into his mouth with her teeth and rips his tongue out. And I was like, that's phenomenal. That, like, just do it. Just do the thing. And I think my audience was not a horror audience. I think they were kind of a more of a mainstream audience that were there to see, a Jesse Buckley kind of big studio movie, and they were like, they were like really upset by that scene, and I was just like, there you go. That's a fucking that if there's a horror scene in that movie, that's one of them.
Yeah, that definitely is one. Yeah, she full on bites his tongue out of his face and enjoys doing it too. It was very
Yeah.
prolific in that moment. Um, my original answer was going to be the rebirth of the bride because they put this like reanimation fluid in her. It's like a black fluid, and that's what she spits up, and you see on the stain on her face and on her tongue. And when she's first rebirthed or rejuvenated, resurrected, she spits a bunch of it out, and it's pretty gross. But I read an interview with Maggie Gyllenhaal where they did test audiences, and Warner Brothers was like, you got to tone that down because I guess in that original scene, Frank goes and licks the black goo off her neck, and they're like, you can't have that. And she's like, all right, so she took it out. I'm like, I
They,
want that
they
back
did it in
in.
the drive-in though.
Yeah, but like there was a like in the
It was
original
it was
scene, like
less, yeah.
yeah, I wanted the full on graphic one, but the one that really got me because I just didn't see it coming. And it wasn't that it was particularly gory. I was just like, God, it really shocked me. It was not scary, but like, oh man, was the scene at the drive-in when Frank gets shot because they
Yeah.
full on like shoot and his head gets blown like full on blood splatter from a bullet ripping his head open. It's pretty gnarly. And it's not even so much the gore, while the gore is there, and it's a very splatter filled scene when a bullet rips through his head. It's just the shock of that because you're just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like he's gonna make it, and he doesn't. And it goes to the back of his head and pops out the front, and you're just like, oh shit. And it's just a very jarring moment, and they do a really good job with the blood and like the gnarliness of that moment. But it's not even as much about the gore as much as it is like I was just shocked that it happened.
Yeah, no, I feel like this movie in those moments goes very hard. Where you're just like, whoa, holy shit. Even the moment of her, it's a great, actually really great sequence. And it's probably I would say I think it's a CG moment, is when she actually falls down the stairs, when she's being shoved down the stairs. A really incredible CG in the way her body's twisting and contorting and her neck is hitting and snapping and her leg is snapping. It's very graphic and very, very like realistic. Like I'm like, man, like shout out to the CG department because I think they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Patrick, next category. What needs the bride treatment? Now, I know we've talked, because again, we've done a lot of these like classic horror films being remade these days with Nosferatu, and I mentioned, Dracula Love Tale and Frankenstein, the Guillermo del Toro version. And we said, what deserves the next like version? And I think I did Jekyll and Hyde, and I think you did, maybe it was The Mummy. I can't remember which one you picked.
Might have been the
Um,
Mummy.
we were just talking like, but this is a different version. We were basically saying what classic or what other movie needs the bride treatment where they totally reinvent and like totally remake the character, which is it's not all going to work, but like I so appreciate the wild swing that Maggie Gyllenhaal took with this movie. Which, going back to the Nosferatu of it all, I said that's one of the reasons I love this because I've never seen anything like this. Not just the Bride of
Hmm.
Frankenstein, just in general. So
Yeah.
Patrick, what needs the bride treatment next?
Damon, we just can't seem to get it right because I think they keep it's suffering the Dracula situation. We need another Wolfman, and this time I want to nominate a guy who's going to go like, I already did it. I'm not doing it again. But he reinvented it in a way that I had never seen it before, and I think you know where I'm going with this. And that's the Wolf of Snow Hollow. The Wolf of Snow Hollow reinvents what you know a werewolf movie to be. And I don't want to spoil that movie, but I'm going to tell you that there is still very much room to do a Wolfman movie in that format because again, I don't want to, I love that movie so much and I rewatch it about once or twice a year. So I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. I just tell you, I highly, highly recommend it. And if you wanted to go the full Wolfman, with that same idea intact and really the idea of the beast within and how you're trying to contain it, I need that in this wild, insane backdrop with craziness, and just the idea of like trying to contain your inner self, trying to contain the beast within. If it feels very parallel to The Bride, and I would love to see them give it that treatment, because I think that the Wolfman, it's not happening the way they've been doing it. It's not working.
Yeah, I mean, we had such high expectations for Lee Wanell's Wolfman. It just didn't land
Yeah.
the way we hoped it would. And you're not making the movie for me necessarily, but I don't think that movie worked for a lot of people. And it was just like really disappointing because we're like, man, because he did such an incredible job with The Invisible Man. That is such a good
Yeah.
movie.
That's a
Like,
reinvention.
and that is like the best reinvention, honestly. Like I'm not like trying to compare movies, but like the Invisible Man is one of the best reinvention of a classic horror character ever made. Like that movie's incredible. And that's I think why we were so excited for the Wolfman. It just didn't work out. So I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction than just like the classic Universal characters. And I think I actually mentioned this when we did that episode. Maybe it was Frankenstein when I said Jekyll and Hyde and kind of making it like a woman version, like make the women characters instead of men. That was my like gender swap version. I'm not going to do a gender swap. I'm not going to tell you the story, but I would like to see a modern retelling, a modern version of the Portrait of Dorian Gray. Now, the
Yeah.
Portrait of Dorian Gray, if you remember that story, it's a man who like sees himself in a mirror and lives to constantly look beautiful, and we are living in a world where women specifically are just driven by those unrealistic beauty standards, and we live in a world where everyone's got phones and everyone's got apps, and you're always constantly seeing people take photos and videos and whatever. I would like to see that version told in a more modern setting because it's a classic story set in whatever I can't remember what period it's set in, like Victorian period or whatever, but like instead of a mirror, make it a phone. Just
Yeah.
make it a phone because we are constantly driven by our phones. I mean, most people use their phone as a mirror these days. What do you see people like, and they check something on their face? They just flip their phone around, look at it that way. I would like to see that version. And you could even inject a little bit of like the substance of it all, where it's like
Oh yeah.
the beauty of it, and like I think that would be a really, really cool reinvention of that product of that idea for a modern story. So instead of a mirror, you have it be a phone, and somebody's obsession with their own beauty standards. And it could still be a guy, it doesn't have to be a girl, but like I think that would be really interesting because you and I both know, Patrick, like as much as that has always been a driving force of life for some people, like living up to somebody else's standards of beauty or what they think is beautiful, it's a million times more now than it's ever been before.
Oh my God, yes. And you mentioned the substance. The substance is almost a reinvention of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like almost like it very different too. And that's the point of this category, is to just say, what if we went so far in another direction with these characters? Like where we really, it almost doesn't match any of the classic tellings of this. Like something told from a completely different angle. Like what if instead of Jekyll and Hyde, Jekyll is an aging TV star, and Hyde is her alternate personality that loves the limelight. What does that look like? That's a reinvention of that idea. And it's fantastic. And it was nominated for Best Picture. I mean, Jesus Christ, like it's a fantastic movie. We can do this, folks. We are starting to get a foothold on the Oscars year after year. Sinners, the most nominated film ever, is a horror movie. We can keep doing this because horror is willing to look in the darker corners of our psyche, and people right now are loving it. Like, let's take advantage of it. Let's see it. I want to see it happen, Damon.
Yes, 100%. I want more. We were celebrating the substance last year. Now we get Sinners, we get Frankenstein, and The Ugly Stepsister, which is nominated for Best Makeup, which is
Yeah,
so
all
ridiculous.
all of those in my top 10, with Sinners being number one.
So we need more. We want more of that. Keep it up. Keep it up. Patrick, last category. Is it better than The Bride of Frankenstein? Have you seen the original 1935
I
classic?
have I have seen it.
I've seen it once.
I've seen it twice.
I've seen the original Boris Karloff movie a couple times, maybe three times. I've only seen The
Mhm.
Bride one time. But is the Bride better than The Bride of Frankenstein?
Hold your hats, classic movie fans, horror fanatics all around. This is better than The Bride of Frankenstein. They're both beautifully made movies. Both of them are. They're the one thing I cannot ever criticize about the original Bride of Frankenstein. It looks glorious for its time period. You go, geez, this is a beautifully made movie. But it's literally just fucking Frankenstein running around, like that's and then in the end, there's there it is. There's the bride at the end. Ta-da! Thank you for 90 minutes. We're moving on now. And you're like, I came here to see the bride. I didn't get her. The bride, Maggie Gyllenhaal's Jessie Buckley's The Bride, gives you everything you ever wanted out of the bride and more than you could ever imagine. And it was a glorious night at the movies. It was rip roaring fun with one of the best actors probably of all time. Two of them, Christian Bale. I mean, a hell of a movie, Damon. What's not to love? I will watch this again. Am I going to watch The Bride of Frankenstein again? I think I'm good. I think I've seen it.
When you can redefine a character so brilliantly that's been around since 1935, so we're talking about almost 100 years coming up. I mean, God, that's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah.
90 years this character's been around, and obviously they did, they what was the Mel Brooks, what was the Frankenstein?
Oh, yes, yes. I know. Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein. There's been lots of versions of Frankenstein, and there's been, there's been less versions of the Bride of Frankenstein, but there's definitely been that as well. But just like I talked about Lee Whannell reinventing the Invisible Man, like to me, that is the Invisible Man. Like I'm not saying the others haven't been good, and I'm not saying they haven't done other good versions. But now when you're like, what's the best Invisible Man? Well, it's Lee Whannell. Like that is the best Invisible Man. And they're coming out, Lee Cronin's got a new movie for the Mummy, which I was so I won't say I was pissed. I can't remember what movie I saw, whatever it was we reviewed, maybe it was Scream, and they actually showed the trailer for the Mummy, and I hadn't seen it, and I didn't know what it was at first. And I was like, what is this? I was like, oh, fuck, you showed me the trailer of the Mummy. But
I did not look, Damon. I was like this the whole time.
I didn't know what it was because, like, they showed, like, the beginning, and I was like, what is this? And I was like, oh, mother. I realized, like a minute into it what it was. I was like, because it looked like something else. I was like, damn you. But, like, I'm excited for that. But, like, for me, and I know it's, like, a much, much different version than, like, the old Boris Karloff version, but, like, the 1999 Mummy with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. That is the Mummy to me. Like that is the best Mummy movie ever made. I will not hear otherwise. This is the Bride. Like this is a tour de force. This is the only. I'm not saying that Elsa Lancaster's character, her version's ever going to be forgotten. It's iconic. We're all going to always remember that. And it's going to be on T-shirts from now until we're long since dead. But I want a T-shirt with Jessie Buckley's The Bride.
Yes, I want one so bad.
I want it so bad. Like whoever's out there listening, I know we got Rucking Fountain and Pentagram Peter Pan. Whoever listens to this podcast, Creeporama, whoever makes T-shirts, make a Bride T-shirt, and I will buy it immediately. So I that's what I want. I'm not, like I said, I'm not knocking Elsa Lancaster, but this is the definitive version of The Bride for me, and I will rewatch it. And I look forward to it. Like I'm already like, man, I can't wait to get the Blu-ray or the 4K so I can watch it at home. So it's that good. And yeah, you need to watch this movie, Patrick. I mean, you and I have, but I'm saying for our audience, like go check this out. It is I've seen mixed reviews. Some people saying like, it didn't work for them. And it is weird. It's a weird movie. Like we didn't really get into all the weirdness. I think a lot of the weirdness comes from like the disembodied voices coming through, the bride's head, and you're like, who's talking right now? What the fuck's going on? But it just works so well. Like when Frank has his little daydreams where he's dancing and putting on the Ritz and shit, and you're like, what fucking fever dream did I step into right now? It didn't work for some people. It clearly worked for you and I.
It really worked for us, and The Bride really works for me. Oh my goodness, Jessie Buckley can do no wrong. I'm floored by her abilities.
Yeah, she's one of the actors where I would just be like, I've interviewed I've interviewed Oscar winners. I've interviewed Halle Berry before. I've interviewed Oscar winners, and I'm very professional. Like I don't get nervous, but I might have to like settle myself to talk to Jessie Buckley because I'm in such awe of her talent. Where I'm like, fuck, all right, hold on, compose myself right now.
She's incredible. Damon, I'm gonna hijack the podcast for a lesser talent. My drama short film, Don't Do It, is now streaming on Momitu, which it's very rare that short films ever get streaming, and not only streaming but the potential for revenue. If you're a fan of this show, and I'm talking to the hardcore ones because they're listening to the end of this show, if you go and download the Momitu app, Momitu, on your phone or your smart device for your TV, you can watch it for free right now. You don't even have to put an email in. You download the app, you start watching right away on the short film showcase. The more that my short film gets shown, the more we get to share in that revenue. And it's called Don't Do It. It's a drama about intrusive thoughts. And please check it out. Please support your boy because I'm out there. I have to remember to promote myself. I always forget to do that. And I did not want to forget, Damon, today to promote myself, that my short film is now on streaming anywhere you get your streaming.
So check it out, Momitu. Check it out. And it's definitely going to be worth your time. That one goes back a ways because I watched that one a while ago. That was from like a couple years ago.
Yes, 2024. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember watching it, but it's been a while. So yeah, check it out, Momitu. Check it out. Support your guy. Support our guy. And as always, want to say everyone to thank you that supports our show. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and of course over on the website, rewindofthelivingdead.com. Also check us out on YouTube. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. Even if you don't watch us over there, just like and subscribe. Makes a huge difference in terms of like our algorithm, our search results, all that kind of good stuff. And we always pitch it. I hate to do it again, but I'm going to do it again. Patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. It's $5 a month. You're supporting your boys. You get early access to episodes. You get episodes you won't get anywhere else. And you are going to get our Oscar wrap-up show coming up. And I think that's going to be a fun episode because we're either going to come on there really happy or really pissed off, depending on how these things go. So we'll see how it all plays out. If you got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, I'd always love to hear from you guys on your thoughts on these movies we review. So if you saw The Bride and you got some thoughts on it, let us know. Hit us up anytime on social media. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. We're on Twitter/X. We're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram. And you can also send us emails, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That is livingdead@gmail.com. Or you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And as always, want to say a big thank you, as always, for everyone that tunes in the show. Make sure you come back next week for another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. We will see you then. Thanks for tuning in.
Peace.